All right, everyone, so we are on module 6, and with this module, we are halfway through the summer. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yay! It just means that you're halfway there, halfway through getting another 3 credits. You guys are doing great. Loving the discussion posts again. Can't emphasize that enough. And this week we are going to be talking about ethical counseling and career counseling, and how we need to be aware of the ethical codes that are abided to by career counselors, and how to incorporate our codes of ethics into our counseling practices in general, more specifically when we're doing career counseling. I do want to point out that when you're reading the chapter, just be aware that the ACA Code of Ethics that Zunker is referencing is the outdated ACA Code of Ethics, and so the one that is referenced in the text is the 2005 version, and we are currently on the 2014 version. And so I want to point that out because of our discussion this week. I'm going to have you reflect on 3 different codes of ethics. So the NDCA Code of Ethics, the ACA Code of Ethics, and then of course the CRCC Code of Ethics. And so I want to make sure that when you're doing that, you're looking at the right ACA Code of Ethics. So what does it mean to be an ethical career counselor? So our ethical standards are meant to be very inclusive. Now, codes of ethics are just kind of designed and developed to be a little bit more gray, not always black and white, depending on what we're looking at in terms of the code itself. Because the type of counseling that we do is going to be different. Every individual is unique, their needs are unique, and how we approach the counseling relationship is unique. And every time that we're faced with an ethical dilemma, we need to address it kind of on a case-by-case basis, essentially, and go through a decision-making process that reflects the specific aspects of that dilemma that we're being faced with. So when it comes to career counseling, the NCDA Code of Ethics, it does really mirror the other codes of ethics that we're essentially going to be abiding by in our practice. So looking at the ACA Code of Ethics, CRCC Code of Ethics, and NCDA, there are a lot of similarities, some differences of course, but a lot of similarities between them. And so when we're thinking about kind of the most important part of our practice in terms of ethical competence, we are always making sure that we're maintaining ethical practices and that we're upholding kind of the welfare of our clients throughout the entire counseling process. Within career counseling, part of that means that we're providing competent services to our clients. And so how do we build competence? Well, we try things. We learn new techniques. We learn new methods of performing assessments. We learn about new assessments. We build our competence. One thing about competence and our ethical obligation to be performing competent practices or be engaging in competent practices with clients is that it's not good enough to just say, well, I feel like I'm not competent in this area. I've never worked with a client in this way, so therefore I'm just going to refer a client. That's not good enough. We always need to be building our competence. We need to be developing and growing as clinicians and practitioners, and that extends over into the career counseling world as well. With that, we know our limitations. We're able to readily address those limitations, whether it be our limitations in our understanding of different assessments, how to provide an accurate reflection of evaluations of an assessment, how to work with clients that are from different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds from us, disability categories, you name it. So we do address our limitations, but then again, we're also seeking out education, training opportunities, and supervision so that we're building our competence. Kind of moving into confidentiality, in looking at the PowerPoint and how the textbook in this chapter especially I enjoy because it provided all of these potential ethical dilemmas that were very realistic, I think. And so it really provided, I think, a nice picture of what can actually occur when somebody is a career counselor. But certainly when we're thinking about things like confidentiality and informed consent and boundary issues, we're looking at confidentiality as something that we are upholding to the best of our abilities. We are making sure that we are outlining the ways in which we are trying to maintain confidentiality in our counseling relationship. We're putting all of that information in the informed consent that we're providing to our clients at the onset of a counseling relationship. But we're also including limits to confidentiality, because of course there are times when we might have to breach confidentiality. If a client is in danger of harming themselves or harming others, certainly those are indicators that we might be breaching confidentiality, again, for the protection of a client. When it comes to counseling minors, and especially doing that in a school setting, it's a whole different world. Because they're minors and because their guardians and parents have access to information, especially within the school systems, which can include case notes. So there are boundaries and limits to confidentiality that we do need to be explaining to any client whenever they're coming in and meeting with us. And in career counseling, that could occur, not only in the onset, but if you're doing assessments with a client, or if you're kind of changing shift or changing focus of the goal, you might be kind of reevaluating that informed consent. When it comes, again, to confidentiality and performing assessments, performing evaluations, it may be that we are sharing information with other practitioners, other people that are assisting us in the entire process, the career development process. And so it's important that we are informing our clients at the onset of who might also be involved. For you all as students, what's going to be important when you get into practicum and internship, to make sure that you're including in your informed consent that you're students, and of course allowing our clients the autonomy to say, you know what, I'm going to work with somebody else, rather than just having to work with us. Clients always have that option to decline services. When it comes to, looking kind of here at slide 6, the boundaries of measurement and evaluation. So really getting into the use of assessments in career counseling, the interpretation of results, the evaluation of results, and use of different instruments. So the NCDA has specific guidelines for assessments, for using the internet specifically. I would also encourage you to look at the ACA Code of Ethics in this area too, because now there's a whole section, Section H, on distance counseling, using technology, and everything that goes into that. That's all kind of new to the latest update to the ACA Code of Ethics. So make sure you're kind of evaluating the difference between the two. So when it comes to using the internet in career counseling, we're making sure that our clients are aware of how to use different applications, different assessments. We're vetting these assessments prior to recommending them, right? So we're going online, we're checking them out, we're doing kind of what you guys have done in the past couple of discussions and assignments. Gone online, looked at the assessments, dug a little bit deeper into the website to see, is there information about psychometric testing? Have studies been done on the validity and reliability of these assessments? What are the foundations of the assessment? What model of career development was this assessment founded on? So it's important that we're doing our homework before just kind of letting our clients go out and saying, you know what, there's all these free assessments online, it's great, the internet is amazing anymore, go to your local library, you can do it, you can interpret it all on your own. Before we're doing any of that, we're making sure that we're referring to assessments that we know to be useful, and that will be helpful to our clients in an ethical way. We're also not ever just saying, go and interpret the results of that assessment on your own. As career counselors, we would be asking our clients, if you're going to be doing this assessment independently, great. How about when we meet next week, the first thing that we do is we go over the results. And then you as the career counselor would be explaining the results of the assessment, what they mean, and then just using that as one of the many other tools you might be using to determine, what the best career goal would be for that client. Websites change all the time, so it's important that we're keeping up to date on all of this. In terms of confidentiality, we need to be explaining to clients that if they're putting their information out there on an internet source, that we're kind of the confidentiality aspect of it is a little bit out of our hands, out of our control, depending on how much information they might be giving to the site itself. The suggestions, there were like 15 of them in the text outlined by NCDA. Again, I think that they were initially developed in like the late 90s, which seems far away, but I think they are still applicable today. Even with the changes in technology that are out there and changes that are available. So really anytime that a client is not understanding the results of their assessment, or if the results of the assessment kind of lend to additional stressors. We're learning that there may be additional training needed. Maybe the individual does need some outside counseling. Again, that's where we're ethically obligated to say, this may be outside of the purview of the services I provide, of my knowledge base, and so therefore I'm going to provide you with an appropriate referral. A couple of other things that are important to consider when it comes to ethical behavior as a career counselor are, ensuring that if we're making a referral and we're terminating our relationship with a client, that they're fully understanding and aware of why that's happening. We never want to abandon a client. We never want to terminate a client's and our counseling relationship in an inappropriate way. So meaning we don't just cut somebody off and say, okay, you're just not ready for this. Come back and see me in a year. So you're going to be having discussions about why it might not be the best time to continue with career counseling, and what are the next steps that the client can expect. You might have that directory of individuals in your back pocket, in your desk, in your email, Outlook calendars, and contact lists of who might be available in your area, community agencies and resources and other counselors that might be able to assist a client. So in any time, of course, that we're thinking about using peer helpers, so any individual that's coming in that's acting more of a peer and not as much of a counselor, we're making sure that we're training those peer helpers on what the ethical standards are that we need to be practicing by, which includes maintaining confidentiality outside of just our office, right, outside of just our relationship. So we are working to ensure that if we are sharing results or an assessment's been done and we're referring out to somebody else, we're making sure that the person we're referring to is taking those steps to establish their confidentiality policy. If we're using technology, we're using technology that's encrypted. We're not just sharing information flippantly over email. We're kind of doing our due diligence looking into the technology that we're utilizing and making sure it's secure, or as secure as it possibly can be, understanding that technology is technology, and sometimes things happen with technology that we can't control. So with that, like I said, what you're going to be doing this week in the discussion board is comparing and contrasting essentially 3 different ethical codes, the ACA, NCDA, and CRCC. And I want you specifically to be looking at what each of these codes of ethics say about informed consent, assessment and testing, cultural considerations, and use of technology. See how they're similar, see how they're different, and then kind of comment on each other. So I provided a nice little table for you guys. I hope it's useful and beneficial. It doesn't have to be overly lengthy. You don't have to provide every single point in each area of the code of ethics, the respective code of ethics. Just pick out a couple of sections of the code that you find interesting and compare it that way. So hopefully it's useful for you all. And with that, I'll let you get to it and we'll talk soon.